It's a long, dusty trail doing this podcast every day. Yes, it's gonna answer all of your float problems away. I'm singing daily.
Okay, welcome everybody. This is Ashkahn.
Hello. This is Graham over here. And we got a special third guest on for today. Normally behind the scenes, but this is...
Jordan.
That's right.
Yeah. Jordan's he's here in the room with us for every single recording of every single episode. And so we thought we'd throw him in front of the mic this time because we have a question that we think he is especially well versed in.
Yep. So this is from one of our audience members, and it's, what is it like having the name Jordan? No, sorry, I'm just kidding. It's which members of the plant kingdom can survive the float center environment, and then in parentheses, healthily.
I mean, that's a good question. Great question.
And before you even answer, just some little backing for Jordan's expertise here.
He is 1/4 plant.
Yeah, it's very weird, but useful for this. Jordan used to basically run all of the whole plant care at our shop, and so we, back in the day, kind of put him in charge of figuring out what would do well in there and how to take care of them and to kind of monitor everything. And he used to work at a plant store,
Nursery.
Plantarium, I think is what they're called, I believe.
I was the houseplant specialist at a nursery for a few years.
Yeah, so he's got all the skill sets required here to give us some good insight on this.
Yeah.
Great.
So what do you got for us?
Well, so generally we're going to be talking about tropical and subtropical plants. You can't put a pine tree in there under pretty much any conditions.
And that's just because of the massive amount of humidity that the tanks are
And the non-fluctuating temperature. Generally, tropical plants have tiny bandwidth of temperature fluctuation. Something like the island of Mauritius, has 25 degrees total fluctuation generally. And
as opposed to the island of Minnesota.
Yeah, well, I'm just I
transfers
actually
a lot
have
of
looked that
temperature
up.
every year,
I averaged out. I looked for their most extremes, and it doesn't go much beyond that. But when you look at somewhere like Portland, we can range about 100 degrees.
Right.
Sure. That's an incredibly large spectrum compared to 25. So generally in a float tank center, you're running extremely high humidity and a very consistent temperature. And tropical plants love that. So the usual suspects and the easiest to take care of, the most hands-off, will kind of just do their thing with some basic watering, are going to be something like the spider plant.
Spider plant, classic.
Yep. And those are really fun because they pup out. So all the arms that stretch out will do air roots, essentially looking for new soil. And you can just cut those off willy-nilly and replant them, and they will regrow very easily.
Yeah, you might get a lot of spiders in your float center, so just be careful of that. It's my advice.
Second on the list is the pothos, and this one's probably the easiest and most will like the environment the greatest. And they're very viney, depending upon which sub-variety you get.
Yeah, those are running vine plants, right?
Depending upon which variety you get, but
okay.
A lot of them, yes, I have seen do that. Yeah, generally they do. And a lot of people like to pin them up because they will just keep running around. And if you have a big enough pot, you can kind of... there's a shop in town that has it go around multiple times, and they have this giant 50-gallon pot in the center of their establishment. It's pretty cool.
Nice.
Third on the list being the snake plant, also known as Sansevieria.
Yeah, you might get a lot of snakes for that with that one, so be careful.
This is not why they're called spider and snake plants.
I would like to add
because they were invented by Mr. Spider and Mr. Snake.
These are also the hit list of the plants that NASA took up into space to test for air purification.
Really?
Yeah.
These are the top, the snake plant, or the spider plant, I think it was top of the list.
Huh.
Snake plants in there.
Nice.
Take hundreds of different toxins from out of the air and purify it. Things like formaldehyde coming off of plastics and stuff like that.
Yeah, fun fact outside of this question, but there's this phenomenon where if you get enough of those top 25 NASA plants into a room, I forget what the critical density is. I think it's around like 30 for a usual sized room. Then you actually close your window in order to get fresh air rather than open it, which is really cool. They actually just start creating
I think
their
it's
own
even more
breathable-
realistic. Like 6 mature snake plants. Can do
Interesting,
that,
yeah.
per like a reasonably small room.
It's been so long since I looked into that, but I like fun factoids, that are probably totally wrong in the specifics. So
Last on my
Double check
list
this.
for like the most easy to take care of is also the peace lily.
and they're also an air filter on the NASA list too, I believe.
Yeah. They all kind of double over, it seems.
Yeah.
The jungle must be a really like pleasant place to breathe in, surrounded by all of these
It's
things.
usually what I hear about the jungle. Calm, pleasant, safe.
I have a couple honorable mentions that I would also put in the category of easy to take care of,
like that.
especially in this environment. Outside of this environment, they're more of like a novelty type of plant that come with a bunch of extra things to do, but this is like their environment. So that would be the orchid.
Nice.
Really fun. Kind of just does its thing. When it's at 90% humidity, it's constantly collecting that water on its own.
Like you don't even have to water it.
If you notice it's not getting enough, what you can do is just kind of toss a single ice cube on there once a day, once every few days. And they generally respond well to that. The staghorn fern is a super cool one.
Yeah, you might get a lot of staghorns. Just be careful. Be careful there,
This one's kind of strange because it's usually mounted on the wall like an animal because it has these like horn-like leaves. And it's
Do we have any
another
of those that float on?
no.
Okay,
No,
I was
it's a
going to say,
fun one.
I don't remember that one.
It often looks like an art piece, but it's totally living. And again, ideal environment, and it just pulls moisture out of the air. You could, if you really wanted, you could spritz it with a water bottle. But man, in the float tank environment, it's just loving it probably. So I wanted to talk about also the largest, the hardest things you might be working with in the float tank environment specifically.
For in terms of plant care.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. So
So
generally-
otherwise it's salt.
Or just like the worst plants to have inside of a float center. I feel like
pine tree,
pine tree.
cedar. Well, you're indoors, so you don't have a lot, unless you have huge windows. If you have large windows, wow. I mean, you just got all the factors under control, essentially. But not everybody gets large windows, so you're working with dim light or LED light.
Right.
And that type of light, the diffusion goes down pretty quickly. You know, an inch away, you're losing. By 6 inches, you're at half. By a foot, you know, a quarter or less of the original potency of the light. So again, the list I started with are very low light plants as well, and deal with it generally. You can, it's incredible what they can take in the matter of low amounts of light.
Yeah, I guess when you're covered by a canopy of jungle foliage, like you just gotta, you gotta
You
figure it
adapt
out,
to
you know?
very tiny single photons of morsels of meals. Yes. Overwatering is another big factor because again, you've got this incredible amount of humidity. You generally want to water really well and less frequently. I think the biggest mistake is you can do tiny waterings really frequently, and it doesn't saturate and it doesn't get deep, and so it's constantly searching for that watering. So you might need to do one watering a week, and you just get it really wet and make sure that it doesn't stagnate. You always want good drainage. Always have a hole in the bottom of your pot, essentially. That's a fundamental no-no. Things to watch out for would be mold. Again, 90% humidity or
Wait,
whatever.
actually, going back for just 1 second,
Yeah.
too, I realized I had a question on the last one, which
Sure.
is how do you, like, especially since they are absorbing humidity from the air and stuff like that, you might not be on a normal watering schedule with your plants. How do you tell if you're overwatering typically? Or what signs would you look for to be like, oh, I'm probably giving this plant way too much water. I should tone it back.
So I was going to, I guess, answer that in my last warnings. Kind of like the two major manifestations of overwatering are going to be mold and fungal gnats.
Oh, okay.
Also, your leaves will wilt. When it's underwatering, they wilt from the outside in, so you'll get crispiness at the tips, and it works back. But if you're overwatering, they get wilty, they crumple, And instead of there will be no brownness generally. It'll
Okay.
just go to like a darker color and kind of fold over. And then, fungal gnats are an obvious sign of overwatering. They come when there's stagnation, when there's bacterial growth, essentially from water sitting. They're not devastating to the plant itself. They're just annoying and kind of tough to get rid of.
Yeah, fungal gnats flying around your float center doesn't sound like
No.
the most relaxing environment.
Yeah, and they're
post-float.
pretty easy to call around too. They show up on the scene pretty quickly after overwatering.
Those are just like little guys, just little.
They're
black
tiny.
gnats,
Yeah,
okay.
they look like maybe quarter-sized flies.
All right,
Yeah.
cool.
That's about I mean, aside from that, it's a really fun environment, you know? Like a lot of people wish for that type of environment who collect plants. Like
Yeah.
in their home, you're trying to recreate exactly what it is.
I had a plan when we were first opening Float On to
A
just
plan T.
it was just to have our entire lobby floor just be grass, you know, bring in a bunch of sod, lay down a whole grass area, and then people could just lie in the grass and hang out.
I
Seemed like
think
a good
I think
good
float
way of
centers
dealing
could
with
really
salt.
take advantage of like vertical tropical planting.
Yep.
I mean, you
what
could do a
said,
wall.
yeah. You know, taking that idea and turning it into a sane one. I
just
think
saying,
that if
yeah.
you put things
I think it'd be
vertically
nice.
on the
So
walls, it
vertical.
could work really well.
People have picnics in your lobby. That's all I'm saying. Still a good idea.
And if you do that out there, definitely take pictures and send it in, and we'll talk about the pictures and describe it to everyone who's listening.
You know, before the float industry came around, large bags of Epsom salt, you could buy it from agriculture stores
Right.
because it's used
Yeah.
in spreading it in fields
That's
to
what I'm saying.
replace salts in the
Slip
soil.
resistant, good color. I think it's a good flooring option
Probably even just in your float rooms too.
in the float tanks, the bottom of the float tanks.
All right. Any final thoughts or advice for people? Jordan, specifically, not Ashkahn?
No, I think it's fertile grounds. I think it's
Ooh,
a lot of
good
things.
one. Love it.
I think it really just makes it easier than the average situation. I think take advantage of it to the fullest extent. It definitely adds to a space if you're not going for the like iPod sterile environment look.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for
Yeah.
hopping on and,
Yeah.
and kind of guest hosting this and taking the bulk of the responsibility away from me and Ashkahn, which is awesome.
Yeah.
It's a lot of stress up here behind the microphone, you know?
All right. If you guys have other questions for us or for Jordan, our resident plantologist, I believe he has a certification in that or something, you can go over to floattanksolutions.com
Slash
Oh, well, yeah, go for it.
A podcast
Yeah, that's it. That's the one. And we will answer your questions every day
for the rest of our lives.
for the rest of our lives. Okay, bye.